This is David with High Performance Stoicism. I want to talk to you about Stoics in mixed relationships. No, I'm not talking about that kind of mixed relationship. I'm talking about a relationship in which you are very interested in Stoicism or you're practicing Stoicism, and the person you're in a relationship with is not really interested in it. They don't want to be a Stoic. And this really interesting question comes to me from one of my people, Ryan. Thanks for the excellent question. And what I'm going to tell you in this video might be surprising because I'm going to argue actually for your stoicism to work and your relationship to work. Most likely, it's both of these are going to work better if the other person isn't that interested in it. Meaning, I'd recommend mixed relationships for Stoics rather than one in which you make a decision with this other person. I'm going to be interested in Stoicism. I'm going to practice it. And so are you. Let's do it together. Now, at the end of this video, I'm going to ask you for your reflections because I know there are Stoic couples out there. But let me first make my case for why you actually have an advantage for improving your relationship and improving in Stoicism if it's just you who is the Stoic. And so throughout this conversation, I'm going to talk about your wife, your girlfriend, but this will go for any kind of relationship that's romantic. And we are talking largely about situations where you're living together because that's when things become more challenging and more difficult. So let's start with the basics and a important principle that runs throughout Stoic ethics is some things are up to us, some things are not up to us, and that's the dichotomy of control. In a relationship, if you pick up stoicism and then are committed to, I am going to do what's in my power. I'm going to use what's in my power, that is within my rational mind, to the best of my ability. And what do I do with things that are out of my power? I put that aside to some extent and I treat it as is proper to its nature. So, your wife, first of all, she's a human being, she's a woman. And so you have to understand, well, what is such a kind of being? And also, she's your wife. And of course, the situation changes if she's a girlfriend, but take that into account. And so your focus is using your mind, your reason, in order to improve yourself over time. That's going to be your focus. By doing this, one thing you're going to do is you're going to have two distinct categories, and that is what's up to me. That's the way I'm going to address my own progress, and that's going to be my main focus. In other words, by being with someone who is not really that interested in Stoicism, you're saying, that's fine, that's you, what you do is out of my power, and I'm focused on my what my progress be, and that's going to be hard enough to do. But this way, you can focus on your progress more than if you're dealing with another person who's working on her progress. Now, the Stoics recognized the following challenge to all of us, and that is we all have a tendency, as we're doing this difficult and challenging work, to improve ourselves, to become virtuous. We have a tendency to worry about what others are doing. As you correct yourself in terms of your self control, in terms of your courage, and sometimes that's going to result in you backtracking and doing the just thing when you start off by doing something or thinking about doing something that is unjust. And that's a challenge enough. But doing all this work, you will often look at other people and see, well, I'm doing better than them. They're really not even trying to improve themselves at all. But I'm going to say you have to resist this tendency to care that much about what others are doing. And here's how it's going to work in a marriage. You're just going to descriptively judge what your wife does. Okay, so my wife went out to go visit a friend, or my wife said this thing, and you're not going to put much moral force on it because that's going to be a that's going to be an area for conflict. So in addition to that, what's going to happen by this person not being interested in stoicism at all, you are interested in it. The challenge you have, the general challenge you'll have with dealing with this person, it's going to be all on you. You are going to make your difficult moments with your wife, with your girlfriend, part of your training. In other words, sometimes you flip out over minor things or silly things when it comes at the wrong time. And so instead of worrying about what this other person did in the situation, you are going to focus on what you are doing 99%. And so make it part of your training, because the situations where you get into difficulty and get in fights, that's when you really want to rise to the occasion and check yourself primarily. And part of what the Stoics tell us to do with what other people do is to say, if someone does me wrong, then who they are harming is themselves. They're harming themselves because they're moving away from virtue. But the main thing to work on is don't harm yourself. So sometimes we get in fights, we say sometimes rude things or sometimes nasty things. And sometimes, let's face it, people will say something a little over the top and cruel or evil. Focus on what you're doing, and then whatever she does, say, well, that's her thing. You really want to have that clean separation between you. So remember, this is all part of your training. And if you learn to deal with this one person better, you know what's going to happen. You're going to start to deal with other people in a much better way. Another thing that you're taking on by doing this is, without describing it as such, you are becoming the leader in the situation. Whereas you used to respond to a rude comment by doubling what they say or saying something else that was rude or mean, you are going to be the leader by refraining from that. You're saying, I want to be just, and I can't be just if I say rude things to the person that I love. It's pretty obvious, but many people think in terms of a kind of exchange. They said it, so I'm entitled to say something back. That's just as bad. The Stoics say, forget about that nonsense. Just work on you being a better person. And what's going to happen over time is that by you becoming less reactive, they're going to notice something. They may not even attribute it to your current interest in Stoicism, but they're going to see my life with this person is better because you're taking 100% responsibility for your mind. So what will happen is, by your being less reactive, they'll notice a change. They will be less revved up or sometimes even hostile in a situation that would normally cause a conflict. And then they will change and adjust to you in most cases, because you're being really strict with yourself. I want to be prudent. I want to be courageous. And courage definitely comes in here. You are going to have to endure some situations where it's not your usual response. You know a good zinger to nail them with. Just hold off, and this will help you with your self control immensely. Don't underestimate how much training will come from doing exactly as I tell you. So another reason to do this on your own, don't worry much about your wife, is because if you both get into it, it's going to be natural, because you're two different people, that you will have different styles of doing Stoicism. Maybe you're like me. You're saying, I want to know the hard philosophical theories behind Stoicism that everybody knows: Marcus Aurelius, Epictetus, and Seneca, but then maybe your wife is interested in a different kind of approach, something that does focus on, let's say, Marcus Aurelius. So think about that. If you're both working on Stoicism, you're not only looking a little too much into what they're doing, but you're adding a new source of disagreement, which is, I think this is the best way to approach it. The other person thinks, no, this is the best way. But because you are so different that it's likely that you're going to take different approaches, you're actually creating a new ground for conflict. Now, I understand what I'm saying here might have some examples that you can use against the case I made for no, it's actually better to be in a mixed relationship. Some of you out there are Stoic couples. I've seen a couple online, and I'd love to hear your feedback. What do you think about this idea? How did it work for you? Because I know in my experience, just by changing what I do and giving that 99% of my focus, I've really improved several relationships in my life, and the people didn't always notice what the difference was. But especially in one case, someone that I was living with, she came around to my way of doing things just because I was really focused on it and put no pressure at all on what she was doing or what act she was doing. What other people do, according to the Stoics, is simply that's their thing. It can be put in the same category as other natural events in the world, right? So the wind blows, trees fall, lightning strikes, and the person you're living with is sometimes in a nasty mood and says something rude. You focus on you and don't worry about what the other person's doing. I'd love to have your feedback. So like, subscribe, and give me a comment, and we'll see you in the next video.